getting us some of like lessons on this at the beginning, and particularly the first couple of places that I worked there, and sort of understanding what angmo meant.
Oh no. Hello everyone, I am Taratai, owner and intercultural trainer at Pro Compass Coaching and Training. Now here at the Crossroads, I usually have a heart-to-heart and one-to-one chats with internationals from all around the world and locals here in the Netherlands on what it is like to live, work, set up businesses, or study in this country. Now, in today's episode, I'm really excited because we have an accomplished interior designer who had not only moved once, but twice from her original country of the UK. She has moved to Singapore, and now she is in the Netherlands. Now, I can't wait to introduce you to her. So why don't we welcome her to the show? Welcome to the show, Amy.
Hi, thank you so much.
Now,
Thanks for
introduce
having me. It's
yourself
great
to
to be
us,
here.
please.
Yeah, so my name is Amy Picanço. I run an interior architecture firm called Aym Design. I moved from the UK in 2009 to Singapore. I founded my business in 2013, and then in the end of 2020, we moved to the Netherlands. So right bang smack in the middle of the COVID.
Right in the middle of pandemic. Very brave.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Tell me about where you're from. I understand you're from Brighton, UK. How is it like coming from the UK and then moving to Singapore?
So obviously quite different. Like totally different climate, different food, definitely different culture. I had just finished university. My move wasn't very planned. It kind of something that happened a little bit naturally. I went over to Asia on holiday at the end of my studies. I loved it, fell in love with everything about Southeast Asia. I came back to the UK, started looking for a job, but in 2009, that was in the middle of the recession, and it was very hard. But everyone graduating at my time, actually, it didn't matter really what industry you were in, people were really struggling. But it did hit the construction industry pretty hard. No one was developing, no one was investing in their spaces. So architects and interior designers, that there wasn't even an opportunity to work for free at that time.
Right.
Some of my classmates moved into different things. And I decided that I would like to go back to Asia and try and get a placement there for a while, build up some experience. And then at the time, my plan was just to be there for 3 months and then come back to the UK. 3 months later in Singapore, after going with just one suitcase, I decided to go to Australia for a little bit, think about what I wanted to do. And at the end of that trip, I managed to secure another job back in Singapore. So I came back this time for a kind of a longer period. I knew that I was going to stay there hopefully for the next year, got my employment contract, and kind of set up shop properly in Singapore, still not having gone back to the UK.
Right.
Officially leaving. And then, 1 year turned into 12 years. And during that time, built a business, built a household, got married, had a kid.
Wow. You were in Singapore for a very long time, isn't it? 12 years.
12 years. Yeah. So, I mean, it does feel like my second home for sure.
Just from that one suitcase. I like that.
Yeah. Well, I went with one suitcase and I came back with a container.
Wow. That's quite a transformation from a suitcase to container.
Yeah. But it was a great time.
Have you always known that you're going to be an interior designer? Is this something that was inculcated in you when you were in UK?
I think I always knew I wanted to do something creative. if I'm perfectly honest, up until I was 18, I was determined I was going to be an international pop star.
Nice.
Like,
I love it.
yeah, being the next kind of Beyonce was definitely high on my agenda. And then I think sort of reality took over. Plus a little bit of push from my parents who said that I had to go to university and get a degree. So
darn it, I could have been interviewing a pop star.
Yeah.
No, but you're great.
Well, yeah, so I mean art was always a passion of mine, and I was trying to find a way. I think fine art for me still is something that I really enjoy. I love painting. But again, if I was going to give up sort of the theatrical route, I was trying to find something that potentially had the ability to be more of a like long-term career path. That's not to say that people can't make a fantastic career in both of those things, but it does take a lot of work. Little did I know at the time that I thought I would be choosing something more sensible, and I have to say, since being in this industry, I'm not sure that I did choose an easier path at all. I think there's a lot of competition,
of course,
and a lot of hustling to try and get your name out there and stand apart from the crowd. But I think that's the same in whatever creative field that you follow. That you need to find your point of difference or your uniqueness, and that is something that spans the globe. It doesn't matter which country you're in, whether you're in the UK or the Netherlands or Singapore. I think that's really
you need to have your unique selling point, right? Start a business, especially abroad. Definitely.
So in fact, now, I mean, for me in Singapore, having come from the UK, that definitely actually helped my business in that sense, because it did give me a bit of a USP without even trying too hard. I had a different cultural background. I could definitely connect with the expats. I could translate what maybe like their cultural values and their experience and their ideas into a design for their space, perhaps easier than my local counterpart.
Because you have a different perspective,
so I could kind of serve a slightly different clientele as well. And I do know that, I mean, we had quite a broad team of people within our office in Singapore. So I knew that certain other people in the office were better at serving different clients. So we'd all kind of take on our part and respect that, because we could, understand people differently. So that was, I mean, and it was nice to learn about a lot of different cultures and a lot of different people in Singapore, because like, you just get kind of across.
You have a diversity of people back in Singapore, right? It keeps you interested, right? In that way.
I mean, I think it's really interesting. I remember, going out for lunch and looking around the table, and sort of everybody there, we had kind of 20 people all from a different country. And I think, and that's really nice because it breaks down barriers very quickly. Everyone's everyone's very open, and everybody comes without like their family, so you make those quite bonds very quickly.
That's true. I think when you are set apart from your core, which is your family and friends back home, you resonate with people with similar backgrounds in a new country. With that said, how would you describe the work culture or business culture like in Singapore?
Very different.
Very different from the United Kingdom.
So I mean, I didn't get much experience working in the UK before I came to Singapore. So I can't comment too much on how the architectural or the interior design practices would conduct their business there. I mean, I do have a lot of friends still working there, and I've had, but limited. However, it was definitely a shock coming into the Singaporean workplace.
Do tell.
I think the demand is very high, in terms of like what people expect and how quickly they expect it. The whole city, I mean, the city is quite fast paced. There's building happening everywhere. People generally get a very short amount of time to design a space. Yeah. So the turnover is unbelievably high. I mean, every time now I just go back, you'll see a brand new building that's kind of popped up.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going home, like even when I was living there full time, I went back to England 2 weeks over Christmas, and I came back, and suddenly I was coming back from the airport, and I was like, hold on, where am I? And this entire new motorway had been built without anybody even noticing.
Yeah, it's true. It was the same experience as me as well. I went back to Singapore for the first time after COVID in September last year, and I just went to the area where I grew up during my childhood, which is Taman Jurong, and then my old housing, the old HDB blocks, it was decimated. It's just all new, and I'm like, wow, the country, the pace is so fast.
It's so fast. So the rental turnovers are very fast. So it means that designers like are having to turn these designs out really quickly. Which generally means that the culture is to work very long hours, very late at night, and weekends. And that was my first experience being there, that I was expected to be in the office a lot. I really disliked that. And actually I could see that there was a lot of, not disliked it because like I didn't want to be doing the work. It was more that I didn't feel like the process was streamlined properly. That there was a lot of repetition of work. There was, I was not used to the Asian hierarchical system. I don't know how to like there in comparison to Europe, I think people are more open. Yeah, like a junior person could say what they feel more openly than over in Asia, where you were sort of like, well, hold on a minute, you can't say that to that person. Like that's the done thing. So that definitely came at a surprise to me, especially when I think it was in my first couple of meetings and I spoke up and gave my opinion about something when I wasn't really asked. Or
how did that go?
Yeah, it wasn't great. I definitely got scolding after the meeting, and
really, oh gosh,
like, oh, just a heads up, I don't think you should interrupt like like the principals.
Yeah, indeed.
Like, okay. But also on the same as what I found with the first office that I worked with, that was actually inhibiting a lot of the potential in the designs, because people weren't saying, so that somebody would have a conversation with a client, it would get relayed to
like, intermediary
designer, or the intermediary, they would get back to the principal designer, but then they wouldn't necessarily take it on board properly. Like there was a blurred line between whether this had come from a staff member or the client themselves. So then we would go back and make changes that we had made for the client, but that actually the director or principal designer, however you want to say that, like the lead, that they would actually want and that they would want to see, but that wasn't necessarily what the client wanted. So there was all this
a lot of confusion that could happen.
And then it like things, then you were there having to do it for even longer, and it was taking more time, and and that was something that I always vowed, and one of the things that I thought about when starting my business is I really, really did not want to create a culture like this. That I knew that I was different coming into Singapore, and our business would run differently, and it would be quite different from the staff. Like there was going to be no expectations of people pulling all-nighters and, you know, trying to drum out this churn of designs all the time. And I thought it's really important that designers experience the spaces that they go to. Like if we're designing restaurants and bars, you have to also be able to go and live your life and understand how these spaces work in order to be able to design them in a good way.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, because I think in Singapore, work is a full identity.
Yeah.
And work-life balance is something of an ideal.
Mm.
And I had a superior told me before that the term work-life balance, the word work comes first. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that pretty much summed up the work culture back in Singapore.
Yeah.
And every country has a different culture, and in this
Mm.
case, it's Singapore itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well, I mean, that was
yeah.
definitely after having kids, something that surprised me between there and here.
Mm-hmm.
Like there, you would either people would have helpers to try to help look after their kids, or for us, we sent our daughter to daycare, but she would be there five five
5
days a
days a
week.
week.
And
Right.
here, I think I'm sending now my son, or he will just start his fourth day a week in daycare,
Right.
and people are quite surprised that the kids are off for 4 days.
Yes.
I need it for 5 days. I can't get everything. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to build a business and going to have a job, then yeah, it's not that I don't want to be there looking after my kids every day. I would love to spend time with them, but yeah, it's trying to find
Trying to find that balance, right?
yeah,
Especially when you're expanding your business into the Netherlands itself.
yeah, and I hope that will pay back to them in other ways as well later. So
Yeah.
um,
I have a business book that gives tips and practical tips on working in different countries. And I want to hear what you think about this, about the Singapore, a tip about working in Singapore. Okay, I'm going to read it out, and then you
okay.
just tell me what are your first reactions to it.
Okay.
Here goes. Now, English is the language of virtually all business or government correspondence and most transactions in Singapore. However, the English spoken often has native inflections, syntax, and grammar, which can easily lead to misunderstandings. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yes. 100%. I think that's Singlish, right?
Right. Tell me about it. What do you think about that? Is there kind of truth to it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think you probably get used to it quite quickly. But even in some of the things that I now say, like my family back in the UK are like, we never use those words.
What kind of
Even
words do you use?
something, well, I said something about one of my kids being sick the other day to my sister, and I just meant they had a temperature and they weren't well. And she was like, so she's being sick? And I said, no, she's just not feeling well. And she said, well, why did you say sick then? But like, so it's like small things that you just interchange, and in different
Right.
places, people use different words for different things. So like being sick in Singapore could just mean anything that's wrong with you, like you're ill, basically.
Yeah, indeed.
But in the UK, if you use the word sick, or at least that's what Sarah reminded me of, that would mean that you are sick.
Yeah, that you're really ill, need to go to the hospital.
Exactly. So I mean, so things like that, and also, but I think you're probably referring to the laws and things like
whatever that comes to your mind.
I mean, I remember always like the little like on the light, or
right,
I'm reaching. I mean, these things. I don't know if I can probably explain it here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but there is obviously a very different way of saying things.
Yeah,
And
there's certain
yeah.
there's certain Singlish words that crept into the work culture in Singapore. Like, for example, if you say that, oh, that presentation is chim, no, and chim means, oh, I'm dumbfounded by that. Like, I don't understand his presentation at all.
Yeah.
Or like they will say like, oh yeah, my boss he's a bit chim, he speaks a bit chim, like he's very means like, oh, he's maybe he's too sophisticated for me, like I don't understand what he's saying. Oh, basically it's another word for saying like, oh, I don't understand him.
Yeah. And I remember getting some of like lessons on this at the beginning, and particularly the first couple of places that I worked there. And sort of understanding what angmo meant.
Oh no. Oh
and
no.
so yeah, there was definitely the kind of slang.
Yeah, the
I
kind
don't
of
think,
slang.
yeah, those like crept into my vocabulary as such, but I definitely understood it when people would talk like that.
Yeah, I like the fact that you brought up the term like on the light, and I'm like, yeah, that is very Singaporean, isn't it?
Yeah, it
You would
is.
say like switch on the light or switch
Yeah,
on
or
the light.
turn on the light
Yeah,
or
turn on the
something,
light.
but you wouldn't on the light.
Yeah, it's
It
just
was like
shortening
missing
it.
words.
And I think like after 12 years, like you would have like a deep understanding of what Singlish is like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's move on to so from Singapore you built a wonderful, successful business. So how is it that you're now in the Netherlands? Like, what is the story behind it?
So I think COVID was obviously a huge driver. I think it gave everybody that time to sit back and reflect on what they really wanted out of life, I suppose.
Right.
And it definitely brought to light a lot of conversations my husband and I had, and that maybe it was now time to act on it. So we'd always talked about one day buying a house, and in Singapore, let's be fair, that unless you're a multi-millionaire,
Right. Right.
that is like very, very hard to do.
No,
So
yeah.
we always knew that one day our time in Singapore would have to end purely for that. Like it was so fantastic to live there as a young person, and to build a business there. But we had just started a family. We had a 1-year-old daughter at that time. Well, she turned 1 literally like as COVID hit Singapore. So it was in February 2020.
Right.
And those first 6 months in Singapore were pretty tough with COVID. Just getting supplies for babies and then being locked in an apartment with a 1-year-old.
Right.
And it kind of made us reconsider what we wanted long term.
Right.
And it kind of gave us the kick to do it, because I think life was just, I mean, it was fine as it was. Like things were working. Like why, why reinvent the wheel
Right.
when everything is fine? But that was, yeah, really what we started reflecting on. And if we wanted to make these things work,
Right.
like, now is as good a time as ever.
Yes.
And we
why
also,
Netherlands of many
so
countries in the world?
yeah, so so my husband worked for a Norwegian energy firm.
Right.
With what I do, I knew that I could probably carve a space no matter where in the
There you
world
go.
we went. Obviously, I think yeah, not that I really had a preference. But I knew that we wanted to move somewhere that we could like really settle down and create a home.
Right.
So for him, he was given a couple of choices, whether to move to Oslo, to Paris, to Aberdeen, or to the Netherlands.
Right.
And he really, and I totally agree. The company that he works for is fantastic and he loves his job. So there was no point, again, like if we could stay with the same people and he could have that same role, but we could move countries, then like that was too good of an opportunity to miss up as well.
Right.
And I think out of those places, Oslo just for me felt way too far stretched from Singapore to Oslo.
Right.
Like, that's quite a different, like totally different life. Aberdeen, again, quite hard. Yeah. I mean, Aberdeen we would have probably considered, but actually the Netherlands, I think it's even easier for me to probably get back home to the
the
south
UK.
UK from the Netherlands than it would be from Aberdeen. I mean, there's flights here, like, I don't know, I think it's like 7 times or maybe even 8 times a day. Like there's so many flights. There's the train that goes straight to London. I mean, it's just easy.
Right.
And then, yeah, I mean, Paris would have been a very similar life to Singapore. It would have meant apartment living again, or living so far out of the city that, that we couldn't, or the commute would be horrible. So yeah, I mean, it kind of was a no-brainer. Just like,
Nice. And that's why we are now talking to each other, right?
yeah, I mean, the Netherlands is great. It's has a fantastic culture, I think, for the kids and education, and yeah, and that's I feel like that was the main driver of our move, to kind of be able to give them.
And how has the last 2 years been for you in the Netherlands?
Yeah, busy. I feel like it's completely flown by. So yeah, I'm still kind of finding my feet.
Right.
My work has still been a lot, like most of it's been still based in Singapore.
Right.
We still have the business there whilst trying to grow a new business here. But I also have a son. So yeah, with like pregnancy, having a kid, moving, it was all like, yeah, it was a busy 2 years.
Yeah. So it's no longer a suitcase to a container. How's it like to move into the Netherlands? Is it 2 containers now? What was that like moving in?
Yeah. No, yeah. So we came with we did sell a lot in Singapore. So I mean, again, moving during COVID was not the best time to move in sense of like container.
Oh, it must have been so crazy.
Yeah. So but yeah, so we've got a lot of things still here from Singapore, but yeah, it's kind of starting again, and we didn't know where we would be living when we moved here either. So all of our things were in storage, actually still in Singapore for 6 months. We gave ourselves a kind of 6 month window to come find a house, like work out life, and I have to say we've been like just super lucky that the pieces have fallen into place,
right?
And yeah, finally set up, have a house,
right?
Like,
I mean, there are many cities in the Netherlands itself, and you settle somewhere near to the Leiden city itself. So, like, why this particular area? Yeah.
Well, we kind of drew a ring around where Murillo's office was. And it could be anywhere.
Right. And his office is where is his office?
I'm gonna say this wrong, but Hoofddorp.
Oh, Hoofddorp. Yeah. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very easy commute on the A4.
Right.
But yeah, we found this house and it had great bones. I knew that I wanted somewhere that needed a little bit of work doing to it.
Oh, of course, interior designer.
Exactly. So I think we were just really lucky that this particular place that we found does require work, and that maybe put a lot of people off. But for us, it was perfect because it had like a great structure, and we knew that we could come in here, we could grow family and grow our roots and life here. So yeah.
Yeah.
Still got to do the work on the house, but we'll get there.
Step by step. Yeah. We'll get there. We'll get there. So are you enjoying your life here in the Netherlands itself, the last 2 years, and living near to Leiden itself?
Yeah, I mean, Leiden's such a beautiful city. And I think this particular location is fantastic because, yeah, like to be able to move around, you're so central. I don't think I ever quite realized how small the Netherlands was until actually living here and like understanding that was only kind of 35 minutes, 40 drive from Amsterdam and sort of 25 from Den Haag. So I think that's really nice. It's been fun exploring. Again, that was something that we missed in Singapore. Come the weekend, you're like, where should we go to?
Yeah, it's a bit busy, right, in Singapore.
Yeah, but also like after 12 years, you obviously know, I mean, it's
everything.
Such a small island, like unless you want to like start driving up into Malaysia and then you need a car, but
that's true.
There's not many new places to explore.
Would you say Leiden is an international friendly, expert friendly city?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the biggest difference between here and Singapore is just, because of the proximity to everybody. Here it just takes more time to build up some of those connections, whereas in Singapore, the influx of people is so high. There's like this massive turnover all the time that everybody's willing to make quite quick connections and I suppose bond very quickly. Whereas here I think people are more settled. they're going to be here for a longer time. They might have family already, other commitments happening. So I think in that sense, it just, it just requires a little bit more time. But yeah, so far, everyone that I've met has been really friendly, and I feel like I'm finally starting to build some of those connections, which is great.
Right. So you're saying that in the Netherlands, it takes more time to make connections with the locals, correct?
Or just with I mean, also I think because of having a kid and still working a bit in Singapore, like it's taken me a little bit more time to find my own time to get out and actually make the effort to find people,
right,
or to find my people, I suppose.
Yes, your tribe.
Kind of integrate myself into the right networks, or yeah.
I would think the first few years of living in the Netherlands is all about trial and error, and to go to different groups to see whether you like it, whether the people resonate with you. I'm now living in the Netherlands for 6 years now, and I would say the first 2 to 3 years are the difficult ones, because you're trying to find your spot in the society, and then to see how to where are my people. So it took me a while as well, and I think it's all part of the process.
I found it harder that first year, and perhaps because I was pregnant, but so I wasn't really up for doing very much, but I was also very I felt like I had a time pressure to try and find some people before having another kid.
Right.
But now kind of life has sort of settled down. I feel like, I feel more like able to wait, and slowly like these connections are coming.
Right.
So it's nice.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know. I think when what people who do not move, who had always lived their life in their own country, I think they may have certain misconceptions of us who had moved abroad. Some of them would think that, we have such a great life, having amazing, I mean, our life's pretty good, but there's also struggles that come with it that you don't really see it, right? Unless we talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it does take a long time, and all of those networks that you have, and every time you move, it's essentially starting again from scratch,
precisely,
both on a personal and professional level.
Right.
So in that sense, it's really hard. You're kind of almost setting yourself back in order to move forward. And I think it's exciting for everybody, or the perception, especially nowadays with all the social media. You're posting all these pictures of yourself in a sort of foreign place or new place, and that's exciting for everyone back home,
right?
For you now, that anyway, that's your new reality. So
right. I completely understand it. I remember coaching a woman once, and she was highly educated, from India, has a PhD. And I remember our first session, she said that she moved to the Netherlands, and she said, when I was back in India, I was a somebody, and then I came here, I became a nobody. And I understand that feeling very well, because to restart can be exciting, but can also be very painful. Right?
Especially when you're coming in with nothing. All of that, everything that you've built has kind of then been lost overnight, I suppose. And I mean, even so, like I live in a very small village outside Leiden, and I've now connected with other Dutch people here that have just moved from another Dutch city to the village. But even for them, they're kind of like feel slightly like outsiders of the village and trying to find their people again as well. So I mean, that has definitely been interesting for me from a cultural point of view, to see that particularly in this village, like everyone that seems to live here has like generationally lived here. It seems like they come and stay, and they're here for
for generations in one village. That's what is happening with my husband, especially. I think like so many generations in one particular village and town. And coming from Singapore, wow, I don't understand that. Oh.
Yeah. You would move, I mean,
Yeah.
you could be anywhere.
Yeah, but it's also nice to see that their roots are so
Mm.
deeply firm that I'm quite envious of that too.
Yeah, which is, yeah, I agree. I think it's really nice. And we've just been really lucky, yeah, with
Right.
all of our neighbors. In fact, have been so fantastic at kind of welcoming us and like showing us some of the local Dutch traditions.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's been really, really nice.
what did you find interesting about the Dutch traditions?
I think the one that comes to mind most clearly was when after I had my son, and the idea of putting like balloons outside the house and kind of like celebrating, but in like a public way, that you've had
Right.
a kid, and yeah, like
To
everyone
announce.
on the street, yeah, bought presents and cards. And I mean, I was just like, wow. I mean, after living in Singapore for 12 years, when we were all in apartment buildings, I probably didn't even know the names of my neighbors, and we're like
Right.
door to door. And you've got no idea. Some maybe you say hi to in the lift as you go up, or I don't, but you're all living so close together and you don't know them.
Yeah. I like that you brought this tradition up because it's not
Yeah,
something that was brought up before, especially in this show. So, like for the viewers who's not in the Netherlands, so when a family has a newborn in the house, so they would for the Dutch, so they would actually decorate the window with some
mm.
baby something. It just came, and then they put up decorations. I had a neighbor across the water actually put up a figurine of a stork.
Yeah,
And
yeah, because the
everybody,
baby's like being delivered by the stork. Yeah,
yes, I find it really, really cute because this is not something in Singapore that we see. And I now
yeah.
I
I
enjoy that part of
didn't,
it.
I didn't obviously really know about it, and like so our next door neighbor, who's so lovely, actually came and decorated the front of our house for us.
So
And then
sweet.
I was sort of cooled down from the bedroom, like, look. I was like, oh my God, wow.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was so
lovely.
nice.
I'm so glad that you're surrounded by people who are so open to you. Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. And then they bought the toast with the micro,
Sprinkles.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like the blue ones. It's like an aniseed sprinkle
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Blue for boys, pink for
Yeah,
girls,
pink for
right?
girls, and yeah.
Yeah. A funny story about that. Uh, my husband's Dutch. So when we were dating long distance, it was his birthday. So I wanted to order a birthday cake online for him. And so I went on a Dutch website. So at that point in time, my Dutch wasn't good enough. So
Yeah.
I just Google Translate everything. And then on the Dutch website, they have this category called birth cake, right?
Okay.
So I thought it's a birthday cakes, just
Yeah, yeah,
birth
yeah.
cakes. So I ordered it for my husband, and then they asked, "Oh, would you like to put a photo on it?" So my boy, that at that point he was my boyfriend. So I was like, okay, I'll put a photo of my my boyfriend on this big cake. And then it got sent to his place, and I think I caused quite a. I think my whole in-laws at that point in time were giggling about it because usually I really wonder what the bakers think of because they had to put a picture of a bearded man on a birth cake when usually it's a picture of a baby.
That's sort of the point that you would hope that they would have messaged back and be like,
Right.
that's what you actually wanted to order.
Right. So yeah, but this is all part of learning about the
Yeah.
culture when you're about to move into it or live here.
Yeah.
Talking about that, you did mention about something about the Singapore culture being all about work and long hours because that's how it works here. How is your experience with the work culture here in the Netherlands?
Um, yes, well, I'm working for myself.
Right.
So, so I've had, I suppose, limited experience working with other people, but generally, as far as my industry is concerned, um, it's going to be quite different, I think. Whereas I'm used to these short turnarounds of projects,
Right.
it can be a lot longer. The availability of contractors is obviously very tricky at the moment. I think ever since COVID, they lost a lot of the local or like they lost a lot of manpower, I think, that had come from overseas. And so, yeah, I'm not sure that's really recovered.
Right.
I think for the guys left in construction now, it's fantastic for them because every contractor that I speak to seems to be totally fully booked.
Oh, wow.
Very hard to get hold of. So it's a great opportunity for everyone to put their prices up as well.
Oh, difficult. Right.
Yeah. So, but it means that then like the turnover of projects is going to be a lot slower. But in a nice way, it gives me a lot more time to really think about the designs and tweak and make them like
Perfect.
better than anything we've done before. Yeah, which is really nice. And again, from a like that kind of translates to all aspects of the work. So even we do a lot of commercial work for both hospitalities and also offices. So when it comes to sort of lease time and planning, a lot of people in Singapore, their lease will be expiring and this comes onto their desk sort of 2 months before the expiration date of their lease. So they frantically try to search for a property. The property is normally leased within kind of like a month of them signing the lease agreement. They might have it for 3 years. It might even only be a 2-year lease, but most commercial properties probably 3 years with a 2-year possible extension if they want to, but it's not much longer than that, which is something that we have to take into consideration quite carefully when we're designing, because if we do a lot of built-ins, this might have to get ripped out after 3 or 5 years. And there's obviously an economic cost to that, but also a sustainability impact, and it's not nice. Like we don't want to be creating more rubbish.
Yes.
And so what's nice here is that process definitely seems to be, and I hope that I if you speak to me in a year or two, I will know this for sure, but it does seem to be that we would have more time. People plan better, but then the lease is much, much longer.
Right.
So yeah, some of the larger construction companies that we were talking to, I mean, one guy suggested to me that like a hospitality lease in Amsterdam, for example, like 15 years would be considered a short lease term.
Right.
I mean, like that was his experience anyway, which is great to hear, because then we're now designing spaces that can
last longer.
Yeah, and they have 15 years to make their return on investment. So they can spend a bit more, and then you do see that. I think the quality of some of the design and some of the construction here, when you look at it in the commercial space, the new ones, they're really beautifully done.
Right.
So that's very exciting.
Would you say designing for the design requirements for like somebody, for your client in Singapore, would be different for somebody here, or somebody who lives here, an expat who lives here?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely because of this turnover, that in Singapore, they've got to think about, removing everything at the end. And there's not only do they have to do the fit out, but they also have to consider this reinstatement. So most of the properties there would require you to turn everything back to what it was on the day that you took over the lease. And of course, it's quite easy to do when you're only taking out a lease for sort of 5 years, maybe, because you still got the pictures and you've still got all of the information. Potentially the building managements are still the same. So it's quite easy to enforce. Whereas, here, if you're taking a lease out or you're building a business that you hope is going to be there for sort of 15, 20 years, it's a very different story. And you're going to be looking at the quality of materials and furniture in a very different way. Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah, that's actually really nice. It just informs the way that you design and you create. Yeah, and the chances of you going into your space here that lasts longer must be quite.
So it's much more sustainable in that sense as well. And I think the kind of DIY spirit that people have in the Netherlands, and that they're happy to kind of dig in and get involved, is also totally different. And that was something I was very much used to in the UK. And then Singapore, even in my house, like when I was trying to do some things and like make something, people were just like, what are you talking about? I mean, there's not a hardware store like Praxis here that you can just do and easily get MDF work. But also people don't have the space in their apartments to start storing wood.
I completely resonate with you on that, because when I moved to the Netherlands, I was a bit shocked by the number of DIY stores here. And then like, okay, this may sound a very pampered, but in Singapore, you hire people to even build your furniture for you. Like I remember people in Singapore would ask people from IKEA to build their IKEA furniture for them. And then when I came to the Netherlands and I asked that question to my Dutch husband, he's like, we can build it ourselves.
Oh, the second place I was working in Singapore, in fact, I had designed these big posters for the company. And they were like big marketing branding posters, and they wanted to hang them along this sort of stairwell wall leading up to, from a customer service center up to another level of the office. And they said, oh, we'll just hire somebody to come in and hang these then. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I can hang them. What? And I was like, hang a picture. And I just didn't, like, the guy, I just remember his face. He was like, no. Get somebody to do that. And I was like, no, I really think that I can this up. Like, it's just a poster in an IKEA frame.
Yeah, it's true. This is really funny. You don't realize, you don't realize your culture until somebody points it out to you. And like, okay. So now I do a lot more. I mean, I'm not the most handiest person, but I'm a lot more handy here than back in Singapore.
It's also a requirement here because, I mean, in Singapore, like, labor is cheap.
Yes.
Like, rightly or wrongly, that is the fact of the matter.
That's the truth, yes.
And those people are doing it cheaply because they really require, like, that's their livelihood and that's their income. But you're not going to be able to afford to pay someone here to come and do those jobs for you.
No, yeah. There are a lot more regulations about that here.
There's a lot of regulations. And if you did want to come, you would be like stockpiling loads of work in order to hire someone to come in and help you do a range of different jobs. You're not going to be paying for someone to come over here for 1 hour to put some pictures up on the wall or something for you. So I mean, that is really different in itself. Although I think IKEA now here, do they offer a furniture building service?
Here in the Netherlands?
Yeah, or no?
I mean, there are for specific types.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I think mostly...
They just drop it outside your door. They don't even bring it in. Right.
Yeah, I so far when we bought our furnitures back in here in the Netherlands, like we have been putting our own furnitures ourselves, like a big dresser and all that. The only time we've ever had someone coming in is like for the bigger types, like big wardrobe. But it's a lot more. It's different between the Netherlands and Singapore regarding this matter.
Yeah, right? For sure.
Yeah, well, Amy, it's so nice to talk to you because we share so much commonalities, but unfortunately I have to come to a close because we will never end. I tell you, like, the commonalities, we can talk on and on and on and on about it, but I will have to come to a close on this. And it's been wonderful talking about Singapore and in the Netherlands here and your experiences. So I hope you also enjoy your time talking about this. And would you like to say you end off with two things, like what is a top tip that you have for internationals moving into the Netherlands, and then another one, and then we'll end off with saying hi to your family and friends around Singapore. So what is your top tip?
So I think having some basic Dutch is great, and it's something that I am ashamed to say that I still haven't really grasped. It's very easy to get away with English because everyone does, but I'm really trying. I think that's kind of like your key to integrating, at least, like, not fully being able to speak Dutch, but just being able to make enough of an effort to start a conversation and sort of show
initiative.
politeness, really, that you're trying to build your life here. And I think that is the biggest difference, because then people see that like now this is you wanting to make this home. This is not like a temporary stop. So yeah. And that's something I'm really trying now in my life too.
That's a good tip, actually, because I think no matter how bad your Dutch is, like when they see you speaking Dutch, it just warms the relations. Just open that door a little bit, and then it's easier that way.
Yeah,
I can tell you, after 6 years, my Dutch is not perfect, so don't worry about it.
Well, my Dutch is still pretty non-existent, but I'm definitely now trying.
Don't worry, you'll get there. You'll get there. And would you like to send a message to your families and friends, or even your business counterparts from around the world? Anything you'd like to say?
I'll just say hi to all of my family and friends in Singapore, the UK, and yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy. And for those of you who are looking for an interior designer in Singapore or in the Netherlands, here are her details below. And I would like to thank you for coming on to the show, and to Amy for this wonderful episode. I'm really excited when it comes out. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Bye.